Literature guides make it easy to teach a novel at home for students from about grade 3 to high school. They're inexpensive, about the size of a magazine, and are available from several publishers. Using one novel, these resources include comprehension questions, vocabulary, literary devices, writing assignments, discussion prompts, and pre- and post-reading activities. Most are consumable for the student and some have a separate teacher guide. Some guides add grammar, spelling, or even journaling. Some have a Christian worldview, while others are secular or neutral. Some offer a classical bend with Socratic questions, but every one of them is a budget-friendly time saver for you. Let's say you have a young student, maybe grade 3 or so. For language arts, you're doing handwriting practice and spelling, you've started grammar, and your child likes to read books. This is solid. Good job. When you feel like it's time to add literature, do you have to commit to a reading curriculum or make a switch to a comprehensive language arts program? Not at all. You can use literature guides as your reading component. It's a way to choose the books you and your child want to read without being told what you have to read. It's also a way to accommodate a child reading ahead of grade level. It can be worrisome for parents of an accelerated reader. We don't want content too mature for their age, so it's helpful to have specific reading options by grade level. So why would you use lit guides if you have a prolific reader? For one, it introduces them to classic literature they may not choose on their own. And two, it teaches them to analyze literature by asking critical questions. Then when they read a book of their choosing, they're thinking critically. Sometimes these kids are reading quickly and for fun, which is great, but getting them to slow down and think more as they read is a good skill going forward. Besides, you're not using a guide for every book they read, so they can still blast through a popular series if they like. Let's use the classical children's book Charlotte's Web as we look more into the guides. While this is a story many parents would know, what sort of questions should you ask beyond, "Tell me about Wilbur," and "What did you like about it?" A lit guide provides the questions for you. You're told to read chapters 1 and 2, for example, and answer the following questions. You're teaching a child what to look for when they read a novel. A good tip is to read the questions first and then read the assigned chapters. Literature guides are versatile in that you can have a student write directly in them, or you could use the questions as discussion prompts and assess their comprehension less formally. Some ask basic comprehension questions, while other guides stretch the reader to answer higher order thinking questions. It may suit your student better to ask one style or the other. The style of comprehension questions is something to consider when choosing a literature guide. I like the idea of discussing a question before asking your student to put their ideas on paper. Take your 3rd grader in that book Charlotte's Web, for example. If the question is about Wilbur and Charlotte towards the end of the book, and your child is asked to write about a time they were sad, you can help them process their answer verbally. You might even dictate their answer for them. You're asking a novice writer to use a lot of skills here they may not have mastered yet, so ease them into it. Some guides have a separate teacher and student guide, while others are a single workbook. Which is better? The single volumes are very user-friendly. There are questions for the student to complete which make for interesting discussions you can have with your reader. Answers are in the back. An older student can use these single workbooks independently, and you may want to remove the answers as a key for later. When a series offers both teacher and student guides, the student book is consumable, and the teacher version has discussion questions with possible answers. It depends on the age of your student and the dynamic of your homeschool teaching. If you have multiple students or even a co-op or classroom, the teacher guides are definitely a plus. So how many literature guides or literature studies should you do in a school year? For a solid reader, between 4 and 6 in a year is a good goal. Think 2 or 3 a semester. This allows for free reading in between school reading. You don't want every book they read to be work. Literature guides are not a complete language arts program, but they are a lovely complement to a structured grammar and writing course. The time it takes to complete a lit guide varies by the age of the student, the challenge of the story, and what else you're doing for your language arts. You might take a break from grammar and writing instruction to spend 2 weeks on a novel, then pick up where you left off. Or you might spend 30 minutes on the novel and another 30 minutes on grammar, writing, spelling, vocabulary. It's up to you. What if there isn't a guide available for a book your student wants to read? There are guides for that too. These can be used with a picture book or a novel depending on your student's age group. So if your student is reading a trendy series that doesn't have its own literature guide, you can still use those books for reading comprehension and learning to analyze what you read. Lit guides are one of those secret weapons of homeschooling parents. They make your life easier and deliver quality content. They're flexible and the titles offered are nearly endless. Do keep in mind students want to talk about what they're reading. Literature guides are meant to be shared between a student and parent-teacher. The lovely part for you is you can ask open-ended questions from the guide and interact with your reader without having to reinvent the wheel. The three main considerations when choosing one literature guide over another are Christian or secular, the critical thinking level of the questions, and the parent-student dynamic. When looking at Christian, secular, or neutral publishers, this has more to do with the questions in the guide than the content of the novel itself. Christian literature guides often delve more into character study and bring in scripture of comparative biblical stories. Or parents may be working with a charter school and can only order materials that do not have religious content. A truly secular program may include questions a Christian family may find contradictory, while a neutral program may include general references to religion as found in history. The choice is yours, as most books have more than one guide to choose from. Here's a quick breakdown. Christian guides include Progeny Press, Veritas comprehension guides, some Memoria Press titles, Total Language Plus, and Walking to Wisdom. Secular or neutral guides would be Ready Readers, Great Works guides, other Memoria Press titles, novel study guides, novel ties, Moving Beyond the Page, novel units, rigorous reading, discovering literature series, spark notes, and reflection journals. The next factor I find important is how concrete or abstract the guide questions are. Are you looking for the who did what, when, and where questions, pretty straightforward reading comprehension? Or are you looking for more critical thinking type, the why, how, what would you do, compare and contrast questions? Novel Ties is a good one for deeper questions, while Progeny Press is more direct comprehension. It depends on your student, their reading and writing ability, and what your goals are when reading a novel. And the third main factor to consider is your parent-student dynamic. Will you be directing the guide work, or will your student work independently? Some series include a separate teacher and student edition. Teacher editions can be used as if you're leading a book club, asking questions to check understanding and draw conversation from the student. Students respond directly in their own workbook. Publishers using this format include Memoria Press, Novel Units, and Walking to Wisdom. Discovering literature guides are only for the teacher. Guides are a tool. Use them to suit your teaching style. Okay, that was 3 things, but one last factor to consider is how many different language arts skills you want to incorporate in your literature study. Some guides have grammar, spelling, even writing instruction, and other subject areas. This takes your reading component into more of a complete English language arts curriculum. Total Language Plus does this. Complete between 4 and 6 a year for your full year of ELA. Moving Beyond the Page creates a unit study for the advanced reader based on a novel. Brings in history, geography, science, and additional ELA skills, where something like the Progeny Press guides are very direct for literature, reading comprehension, and vocabulary. If you need a guide with an exam at the end, look at Discovering Literature, Memoria Press, and Novel Units. If you want something to make a math or science connection within your literature, check out the Great Works guides, Moving Beyond the Page, Novel Units, and Novel Ties. If you have a student who loves to write, try a guide that incorporates journaling. These would include Great Works guides, Moving Beyond the Page, Rigorous Reading, or Walking to Wisdom. In fact, you may want to look at the series called Reflections Journaling Response, which is a whole workbook of writing prompts relating to a particular novel. If you're teaching multiple students, you might opt for a teacher guide, like Memoria Press offers, and treat it as a discussion guide after the kids have read their assignment. You could then ask them to write a reply, each at their own level, and provide feedback accordingly. Most books will bridge several grade levels, so this is not hard to do. Can't write this down fast enough? That's okay. We did it for you. Our literature guide comparison chart is a tool to help you choose guides that fit your family, whether you have an independent reader or one that needs more guidance. Print your own copy to have this information at your fingertips. You might decide to try 2 or 3 different kinds of guides in a school year to see what you would like the best. Choices are great, but decision fatigue is real. Use our comparison chart to help you take the most direct route to finding the guide for you. Here's a look at some pages from a variety of guides for the novel Charlotte's Web to give you even more information to help you find the guide best suited for you. Total Language Plus are single guides with a helpful planning grid to coordinate the various ELA components, not just literature. With options for creative projects and even field trip ideas, the work itself is pretty straightforward, reading and answering questions. The directions are quite clear and helpful to the parent. Questions are answered orally on other paper or in the guide itself. You'll make flashcards for the vocab words, so have some index cards on hand. Comprehension questions are a mix of lower and higher order thinking, from what happened to what would you do. Novel Units has a teacher and student guide with a classroom feel. You get more reading strategies like classifying and visualizing, loads of literary elements, and some deep comprehension activities. This is a good example where the teacher guide is enough to help you through the novel. They call the student guide a student packet, though it is bound. I like the clear expectations for the student to complete. It incorporates math skills, logic, creativity, even some science facts about various animals. An answer key in the back of the student packet can be removed, but it seems like you would want both the student and teacher for this type of guide. If you need to accommodate a variety of learning styles, this is a good option. Progeny Press is a single guide with a nice synopsis of the story, details about the author, and pre-reading activities. Students read the assigned chapters and answer questions directly in the guide. These are multiple choice and short answer. They point out good writing to the student, such as a particularly descriptive passage, and ask the reader to fill in the blanks using vocabulary words. A follow-up activity asks the student to then describe one of their favorite places on notebook paper. While initial questions are basic comprehension, there are more higher order questions in a dig deeper section. A neat feature is the character study in the back, as well as some follow-up art projects. Great Works guides are single book options and include standard correlation charts for the classroom. They're still quite user-friendly for parents. The first part of the guide is for the parent or teacher. Learn about the author and read a nice summary before getting into some thoughtful pre-reading pages. Vocabulary is presented clearly for the student as you get into the pages they will complete. Comprehension questions are presented at 2 reading levels and fall into the medium challenge category. There are not a lot of them, but the key discussion points that accompany the analysis section are quite good. The graphics are varied and interactive, and you will cover literary elements and some light grammar. A comprehension assessment in the back can be used as a test over the novel, and there are some creative post-reading activities. Memoria Press has a teacher and student guide for each novel. This is a series where you can easily use one guide or both together. It's a matter of how much guidance you need to teach the novel. They are thorough and easy to use. First, the teacher guide, which includes quizzes after every few lessons, a final test, answer keys, and discussion answer keys. The student pages are included with answers filled in, and since we don't want to share all the answers, let's flip to the student guide. The comprehension questions range from the very straightforward who did what and when at the beginning of the guide to deeper questions later on. Discussion questions require the student to apply the vocabulary they've learned as well as show they've read the chapters. Students reply in the student guide and there is some copywork. Pages follow a pattern, but the enrichment sections vary. Novelties are a single guide and they have loads of book titles to choose from. A thorough synopsis is followed by pre-reading activities, a science connection about animals, and some cooperative learning using a graphic organizer that could just as easily work with a single student. For vocabulary, students first write their definition and then look up the dictionary meaning for comparison. Comprehension questions are thoughtful and higher order style, followed by a literary device section and a student writing activity. Suggestions for further reading and an answer key are in the back. Moving beyond the page is a single guide. This is a good series for the advanced reader or accelerated ELA student, as they are challenged to think critically, do research, and create hands-on projects. Students read the novel and journal their replies in a notebook for some parts, and other replies are done in the guide itself. There's nothing basic about the comprehension questions here. As students finish a chapter, they create a flow chart of the events. Other graphic organizers as well as art projects makes for an interactive unit study built around a novel. Parents will be quite involved at times, and students will work independently at other times. Well, there you go. Everything you wanted to know about literature guides and then some. It's a good idea to look up the book title and see what publishers offer a guide for that book. Use your comparison chart as an overview of each series of guides and look over the activity pages to make an informed choice. They all cover reading comprehension, literary analysis, and vocabulary words for the novel. It's just a matter of finding the right fit for your family. Do let us know if you have any more questions for our consultant team by phone, email, or online chat. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more helpful content from Rainbow Resource Center.